On, guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the Best You Nation. Myself, Finn Adler, and a special guest, Hunter. How you guys doing?
We're doing good, doing good. Um, Hunter, for those of you guys that don't know, Hunter runs a pretty successful, uh, I would call it TikTok slash social media platform. Like, because
Yeah, that's a good description for it out there. Yeah, what's
because
that?
you
Content creation, maybe something like that.
content creator, yes, exactly, better word. Um, and I'm sure you've probably seen some of his videos on like TikTok. He's usually the one that he never actually physically is in the TikTok, but usually he'll ask like a thought provoking question, and it would be like, name a time where you first fell in love, or name a time where you had a heartbreak. And these videos, they did very, very well, from my understanding. They did very, very well during the pandemic, and people responded pretty, like positively to it. And since then, you've gotten a chance to kind of go on this roller coaster, and just a lot of good things that have been like coming on. Like your last name actually matches your life. Like
Mm.
that's Hunter Prosper. It's like, yes, Prosper. This is what you do. So that's awesome, man. Uh,
Thanks,
I
Adler.
guess kind of give us like a brief intro, just kind of let the people know, like anything that you want them to know, actually.
Awesome. Well, Finn and Adler, thanks for having me. I'm really excited for this.
Of course.
This will be my first chance to actually talk to you both in length, so I'm really excited. But how I started was I worked as a nurse, and I used to work in every floor. I would rotate throughout the hospital, and I would see patients of all different walks of life. And then I started to work in the ICU. And what I saw in the ICU, I don't think I was emotionally prepared for. Most of the patients I had seen before then, I could talk to them and I would say bye to them, or I would discharge them, or there was like a beginning and end to the story, and the end was usually they go home. When I was in the ICU, the end, especially working in Pittsburgh, it's a level one trauma hospital, so you see the worst of the worst. I would not see them go home. I would see them die. For not to sound macabre, but I would. A lot of these patients' outcomes weren't what I wanted to see,
Yeah.
and that was taking a toll on me because I was excited to talk to people and hear about their day and hear about what they're going to do when they get out. Now these patients, if they could even have a conversation with me, the conversation wasn't fun. And for the most part, they couldn't have a conversation with me because they were sedated, they were intubated, they were paralyzed. It just wasn't fun for me. And I'm not the smartest nurse in the world, but what I take a lot of pride in is my conversation ability with the patient. I love talking with people. I love listening to people. So I lost the ability to use that skill in the ICU. And I just lost who I thought I was. Whenever that ability was taken away from me, I didn't really feel like I had a purpose anymore. I thought I wasn't helping the hospital anymore. I wasn't helping patients. And that's where I found my purpose. So, um, I would see enough stuff to where when I came home, I didn't want to talk to anybody, not just patients, but I didn't want to talk to my mom. I didn't want to talk to my friends, my roommates. I was just in a really dark place. And then I decided to start finding stories from people. I decided to start talking again, start listening again, to kind of regain that humanity that I feel like I lost. Um, and one thing led to another, and I guess other people felt the same way. And yeah, it was around the pandemic. It was February of 2021 when I started making videos, and it was June or July of 2021 when I started making the videos that I'm like really known for. So it hasn't been too long, but yeah, around the pandemic time, I started to refine who I was, I guess, and refine who everyone else was.
And that's awesome. What I really like about that is, you kind of went into, like, we're all in healthcare. Finn is an EMT. I didn't get a chance to tell you that, but Finn and I
Thank you,
used
Finn.
to, yeah, Finn and I used to work together at actually the same facility that Abby and I met at, in Apopka.
Yeah,
And
I still work at.
Yes, he still works there. Uh,
Shout out.
yeah, shout out to those stomping grounds. Um, yeah, and so like it's funny how like you kind of went through your own emotional battle, and healthcare is just so taboo with like healthcare workers. Like a lot of times people just think like we're robots, like we don't feel, we don't have emotions, we just go and we do and work, and just it doesn't matter. But it is taxing, and that's we have to call attention to that. That's something that is huge. And but more importantly is you felt like you lost a part of yourself, right? And I think it's just pretty amazing that how instead of just saying, all right, I'm in a down spot right now, like emotionally, you acknowledged it, you saw it, and so you set forth a plan of action. You didn't stay like helpless and say, oh well, I'm here and I guess I'll always be here, it is what it is, and just stay defeated. You said, all right, so now let me get back to me. And that's the beauty of it, is that's just purely your authentic self. So it's not like you're trying to do something that you're not. It's second nature. You're doing exactly what you love to do. So that props. I got to give you props on that. Like I can't say that's awesome. That's pretty sensational, because a lot of people operate in this world not knowing what the purpose is, and you literally
Yeah.
found it, and you're living it. So I got
Thank
to
you, Adler.
I got to give you props on that.
Thank you.
But that's uh that's an excellent story. And Finn and I, we started out the podcast just because we felt like this is our purpose. Um,
Mm,
we're pretty skilled conversationalists. I think all three of us. It's you have to be kind of in order to do the line of work that we do. But the whole goal, when we first launched this, was to help motivate and inspire others around us. And I think that a lot of the videos that you come out with, they do an excellent job of inspiring those people around, like giving them an opportunity to have those tough conversations. Like
mm.
I think Finn was telling me earlier, before we hopped on, he was having like a rough day, just with the hospital, and like the hospital was full with just people, and he still has to find a way to center himself to be the man for Cassandra, his fiance, and to still get like the other stuff that he's got to get done. He's an aspiring nurse as well, so he's hopefully we're
Awesome.
get good news, and we're starting in
Yeah,
fall.
5 weeks. 5 weeks from
Five,
now, I should be hearing back from at least one school for now, to hear back on getting into nursing school. It's been a journey. Adler actually, just a kind of side note on it, was very very I would say pushy, but it was the right kind of pushy. He pushed you to
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he was he had this
Motivational.
yes, it was actually was it I think it was right as the pandemic really was spiking, or maybe it was starting to crawl throughout the US. And you were in Georgia, right? Was it before? I think it was like right as in the summer of
it
the
was
first.
around May. Yeah, it was around May, your birthday.
Yeah, well, it was the weekend of my birthday.
Yeah.
We have a whole story about Chick-fil-A, but we won't talk about that right now. But
Yeah.
so Adler asked me, no, sorry, there's two instances. In April, he had asked me, "What is your goal? What's your plan? Next time you come up here in Georgia, you should have a plan and make sure I want to hear about it." And so, of course, when you have good friends in your life and people who stand by you, no matter if they see things eye to eye with you or not, Adler, pushed me in the direction of positive reinforcement and reminded me that, dude, you're going to be great, and no matter what you do. So I laid out this plan, wrote down my stuff to become a nurse, or at least go start nursing school prerequisites, and I did. I showed up again a couple months later. We celebrated my birthday, and
Good.
I said, "Hey, man, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. I got 2 classes I'm starting in the fall, and from there, it's just kind of been a uphill climb." So, just to tag on to the whole like nursing next step of things, because being an EMT
Yeah.
is fun. It has its perks, it has its rewards, but I want more. I want to win an entirely new level, you guys. And especially
Yeah,
when you work in the emergency room and you work around nurses and doctors and PAs, nurse practitioners all day long, you just get hungry for more. You want to do more with what you already know.
yeah.
So sorry to add that.
Hmm. No, I
Well,
mean, shout out to you, Finn. Shout out Adler too. Like that's a really good friend. So yeah, I think I really like this quote. It's like you're the average of the five people you hang out with, or something like that. And I really love that, like that motivation. It's nice to have friends that are constantly pushing you. And also shout out EMTs, man. They're the first line. Like I love those guys and girls. Like they really do a lot.
hey,
Yes.
it EMT is definitely the heart and soul of like the ER.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
but I want to just kind of like highlight just something just between both your stories.
Mm.
Finn, you and I had a discussion, and then in that moment, you said, "All right, I'm going to come out with a plan." You came out with a plan. We discussed it a little bit more, and then you decided, "All right, it's time to execute." Hunter, you said you wanted to get back to being you, and so at that moment, you decided to get up and start getting back to the basics, getting back to things that felt fundamentally right, felt fundamentally authentic. And that kind of brings us to our topic today, uh, which is basically understanding that we all live in these pockets of time, moments in time, right? Where we're experiencing this for the very first time. And there's absolutely no guarantee that we'll ever experience this in time ever again. Like you might have something that's similar, but it's not going to elicit the same emotional response. It's not going to elicit the same wow factor. It's it's going to lack a little bit because of you have an expectation, whether you admit it or not. And like I call these like game changers or pivotal moments in life where you just said, all right, this is the direction I'm going, and then now the rest of your life kind of shapes up from that. um I guess I'll start off with you, Hunter, and then Finn, just how important are those monumental moments? And like, I guess the question I have, the second question is, what forces you to act? What forces you to get going, get moving?
Good question, Adler. I mean, those moments I think are extremely important. And they're ushered in by the little moments, like setting yourself up to be prepared for those big moments. But I think the impetus to capitalize on those moments is knowing that, like what you said, this thing isn't like forever. What we got going on here, it's nothing's ever promised tomorrow today, and I didn't realize that too much until I started working in the ICU.
That was the Kanye
And
West.
yeah,
Got
are
it.
we
I
allowed to
was like,
say
wait,
that?
okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, but I never really understood it until I worked in the ICU, and I had patients who told me, who were very much so expected to not make it out of the ICU. And before they had passed away, they had told me that they were planning on doing something. Um, that hey, next week, like I was gonna do this with a friend, or this next month I was gonna go to this graduation. They had plans. They were going to do something, and by all means, they were going to do it. Never once did they think they weren't going to do that thing. And in all reality, they will never do that thing now. That thing is not promised. So I think the main driving factor for me is knowing that that's not going to be promised. If I want, like making these videos, for instance, I've always wanted to make videos in any capacity. I've always like growing up, YouTube was my favorite thing ever. They were like my superstars. Um, And I think that driving factor was, okay, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do it. But if I don't do this, I'm going to forever live with the what if.
The regret.
The regret. And I'd much rather live with, I tried this and failed hard and look like a loser, then I didn't try it at all. So I think that that's my main motivation, is that nothing's promised to you. So do it, try it, and say that you tried it. And if it doesn't work out how you wanted it to, I mean, whatever, like you tried it. That's a story you can tell someone. Why didn't it work out? I can tell you why it didn't work out. Instead of saying, oh, I could have been this. I just didn't feel like it, I don't, but trust me, I could have been something huge, like
Yeah,
have some
and
evidence there,
like out of the, I guess, risk of sounding judgmental, but I think that that's like the weakest excuse ever. It's like, well, yeah, I could have done this. It's like, all right, yeah, like if you could have, then why didn't you? Oh well, because
hmm
I just didn't. Okay, you didn't feel like it, so then there's
Yeah.
nothing. No, there's no argument here. You aren't that
Yeah.
person. You're talking about an
Exactly.
alternate version of yourself that actually did this.
Yeah.
And like Finn, I want to kind of get your 2 cents on this. Like in that moment, you know, what? Okay, for example, you just asked Cassandra to marry you. What
Yes.
elicited, like, you know what? Hey, I gotta move now because there's no better time than right here, right now, this moment.
Sorry. So what's the question? You're asking me
The,
like
the question is like, how did you like? All right, you just decided to just act on a
that
gut
moment?
feeling or whatever. Yeah.
Um, well, I guess it's important to know one, there was some, we've talked about this before, where we kind of have expectations, right? So for myself personally, I set my own personal goal that at least a minimum of a year of us being together would be a requirement for me to even consider or think about really making any kind of move or to ask Cassandra to marry me. Um, so 6 months ago, or 5 months ago, really, I guess almost 6 months ago, I felt like that was the right time and place. One, we both, I mean, this is really cliche, but we both like Christmas and we both just like enjoy that whole holiday vibe. We both haven't really gone on a huge trip besides going to see our parents in Colorado. And so I felt like a combination of different things. Like, number one's our big trip together. Number two, we also have a lot of things in common, especially considering it was the holiday time. But I felt like we had been going on for longer than a year, actually almost a year and a half together. And it's just, you either do it or you don't, right? Like, so I know it sounds so simple, and it's what you're saying, Hunter. It's like you're damned if you do, if you damn if you don't, kind of situation where it's like I could have not asked her, because I will say, I won't mention names. I had someone mention to me, well, why don't you wait till spring break when we go on a trip and do it at this location? In the back of my mind, that sounded like a great idea. And at first I was like, yeah, you know what? Maybe I will just push it off. But in the back of my mind at the same time, I had this like conflict with myself where it's like, but this is someone else deciding for me. Someone else is saying this is a better option. And in my head, I said, no, I'm asking her to be my wife. This person's not asking anything, and they're just suggesting, which is nice. But I also had to sift through that and realize that I am marrying Cassandra. I get to decide when I get down on my knee to ask a huge question that is life changing. It's a pivotal moment in my journey and for her as well. But to really answer your question, what inspired me and moved me was the right feeling. First of all, I prayed about it. And so that in itself was very big for me personally, that there was a right time, there was a right place. And had I done it 6 months earlier or prior to the year, Cassandra actually told me, she said I probably would have not said yes. So there was like already like just a development of growth in our relationship that we had to reach together, that I felt like we had done at that point. And all in conjunction, it kind of just fell in on itself like that, where we're like, all right, this is the right moment. So there was no like real like I don't want to say there was like no inspirational moment per se. It was more so just is a right feeling.
It's it sounds like it was a culmination of a variety of different things.
Different
Just
ingredients
every
that made, yeah, they're different spices that made the flavor or this just explosion of deliciousness. And I know it sounds so weird, I'm using food as an example, but it just in itself, this was the right moment. And in my, now I will say, people always ask me, this is a question that I get a lot and I don't really know how to answer this, but like, were you nervous? I say yes and I also say no. because I questioned myself. Was I really nervous? No, because I already knew I had an intention. I had a goal. I knew what I was wanting. I wanted to make this life altering move for the both of us together. But then it's also like the nerves of realizing that, number one, being that person who didn't think he would ever be with somebody, who never thought that he would ever really pursue any type of relationship beyond being single because of my own personal journey, my walk as a child growing up. And it's just like that also like lingers in the back of your mind. You're like, whoa, I just did something that I didn't think I would ever be able to do. And I did it. So not only that, and I just continue to beat the odds in my own story and all the other statistics that were against me or up against me. You just continue to break those barriers, and you start to, like Tasha Cobbs would say, you break every chain. You just keep breaking the chain. You're breaking that cycle of brokenness, and you just realize you're moving forward and you're elevating to an entirely different level, which hopefully will be inspirational for those, especially someday when I have kids. You know, I want my children to be able to break free from whatever they ever experience, but knowing that their father is able to do that as
You
well.
know, you know what I actually like about what you just said is the fact that, and nobody really ever highlights this. Asking somebody to commit their whole entire life to you is nerve wracking in general. It's just, you all of a sudden you're like, hey, look, I found this shiny thing. Please say yes. And you
Yeah.
just like, granted, I'm sure you have a kind of an idea, but there's a chance you might say no. Like it's still there. So I
Mm-hmm.
do appreciate you for bringing that up because no one ever talks about that. We really gotta like discuss that. We get like um you know like different hints and tips like, oh, do it with with a good view, and do it with music, and do it all this stuff, like it's proposed with passion and speak from the heart. But no one ever discussed how like you're nervous gonna get, and how like
Oh, for sure.
no, it doesn't get highlighted at all. So I definitely got
Mm-hmm.
to call attention to that, because that's something that we need to let other men know that it's okay to be nervous. You can ask a question.
Normalize it.
Everybody
Normalize it, Adler.
everybody feels it. That's all I got to say.
But that's what's
Um,
beautiful about all that, man. It's like people don't, and I love. Okay, so I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna have to start looking more into the videos you're talking about, because really I don't have a TikTok. I just gonna be honest. I don't have a TikTok. I think it's been a
Yeah.
little bit over a year now that I got rid of my Facebook and
Ben,
my
Ben
Snapchat.
has taken a stance against social media as of
Hey,
now.
Okay,
that's
first of
Finn.
all,
That's
hold on,
great.
hold on, hold on.
Yeah.
It's there are platforms that I just wasn't using, and that was probably
Mm-hmm.
burning and wasting so much of my time, just because I
Mm-hmm.
realized I was spending more time on Instagram. And um it's just like, okay, I didn't really need Snapchat, and I really didn't need.
Finn, the craziest thing, I spend far less time on social media now than I did when I was in college, and then than I did before I started this, which is, I don't know. I mean, I can't really tell you why that is, but I think I was just, yeah, I was eating my time. I don't know if I was just so insecure and I thought that I had to be on it all the time, and the fear, like FOMO. But ever since I started this, it's like opened my eyes, and my screen time is, I think it takes probably 30 seconds to upload a video, and then maybe I'm on for another 5 minutes. So maybe 5 minutes and 30 seconds, like every
Right.
couple days.
Well, I think, and I think I'm like, I'm not a psychologist or anything in this nature, but I feel like just me hearing what you're saying, the reason why you are not mindlessly going through social media anymore is because you've fine tuned exactly what you are there for. Some people use
Hmm.
social media as a tool. Some
It's
people
true.
use it as a way to escape. Some people utilize it as a place to just, that's their whole world. And when you think about what you're doing, you're inspiring people. So you're now fine tuned to, you're on the content creating side instead of being the viewer of the content. So
Not a
therefore,
Yeah.
consumer.
so all these swipes that people do,
Yeah.
that's mindlessness.
Hmm.
You're not being mindless. It requires some thought and some serious emotional investment to
You're
create
bringing
Yeah.
content
attention.
for other people to be mindless. But it's not. The thing is,
Well,
like
no,
for
no.
me,
So hold on. I don't. So and not I I use Instagram and TikTok as a consumer and as a producer. So I produce my own videos. I post them, but I also consume it in terms of like, and you can ask Abby, like she pretty much would attest, like most of my videos that I watch are either motivational or some form of workout. So it's consuming, but not mindlessly.
But
It's like,
it's
oh,
still a
okay,
tool. It's a
this
tool
is pretty,
for
yeah.
you.
And
For
I
some
think
people,
that
but
like
aren't going to be using it as a tool. Some people
you're
literally, I use it to escape. And
you're
yes,
right.
it's essentially a tool, but you're still gaining that screen time with no personal investment. Like listening to a video from Hunter that is asking you a question about, I think Adler, you had said it off air before we started. It's like you asking a very deep thoughted, very deep rooted question that requires you to look inside. There's those types
Mm-hmm.
of like, yes, there's content that as a consumer you're going to want to take in. But what I was more so focusing on the fact of like getting rid of social media, it was freeing for me, and I can relate to you. Like I do spend, and Adler will tell you this all the time. Me and him have some serious conversations about this. I spend like 90% less time than I did before my relationship with Cassandra, and I just genuinely just don't consume as much time on it as I used to. It actually, it's a double whammy. I have spent less time creating stuff too. So I've kind of like took a
Yeah.
instead of draining one, I kind of just drained the whole thing. So it just,
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get back at it. But what I was more so getting to is just like it's inspiring that you, in the moments that you were feeling all the way low and down because of being in the ICU, working with, in an environment that's very detrimental, and you just never know the out. Well, you know the outcome, but you don't want the outcome. Um, you were able to find your own personal healing through that difficult time.
Yeah.
You realize that this is a place of darkness. I don't necessarily want to spend a whole lot of time here, and I want to be able to now take my own personal, it's weird. You take your own trauma or your own experience, and then somehow you find a way to implement it to help people. And this is kind of what the podcast is all about. We both, Adler and I, both have our
Yeah.
own personal moments in the past that we've gone through that have now kind of created this opportunity for an open forum, so we can
It's
kind
one
of
of
use.
those. Oh, I was
No,
just
that's
gonna
it.
say it's just one of those things that you've experienced the low and that bottom, and you're trying to prevent other people from experiencing what you experienced.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's essentially like what we've done. We've been
Mm-hmm.
working at this for going on like 4 years. It's with three
Almost the
so
Warriors.
far,
Yeah.
but like
Going,
almost
yeah,
4 years.
3.5, right?
Yeah. And like the thing that like I forget where I heard this quote, but what you do in the darkness, or what you do in the light is what you do in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Which basically is just saying that if you're consistently working at it, then you'll consistently work at it even when you're not getting paid for it. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is to me, I look at this more as like community service, as like a way of giving back. And a lot of the times, like and Finn can attest to this too. It's just like you'll get like somebody who said, "Hey, I just saw your recent episode. I just heard it, and I really did agree with this point, or I really appreciate that you highlighted, this." It's a way to let other people know that what you're struggling with, I'm struggling with too.
Mm-hmm.
And so, especially when people look up, like, I think nursing, specifically, sorry about EMTs, but nursing
Okay.
has been voted as the number one career in terms of trust for the
Mm-hmm.
last like 9 years or 8 years straight. They do a poll like every year. And like the reason why I bring that up is uh, you want to like whenever a nurse says something, it's like, oh, okay, I hear it and I absorb it more than most other people. So like
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure you have like family members that are in the medical field that call you and say, hey, I I sneezed, and then I
Does
also
this look infected?
yeah, what's going on with it? And
Yeah.
whatever you say in that moment, they're gonna take it as gold. Doesn't matter. So if you said, "Hey,
Mm-hmm.
jump on one foot," you'll be straight. They might consider it before being like, "Yo, that's ridiculous."
Yeah.
So it's important for people in healthcare in general just to be able to open up and have like these candid conversations and talk about like the stress, the traumas, the insecurities, the like those really tough conversations that we try to bottle up inside and not share with anybody. We kind of
Hmm.
have to take away that stigmatism of like, all right, I can handle it myself, and say, all right, let's band together and make a strong community.
Yep.
Um, and like, I'm going way, way, way back to your point that you made earlier, Finn. Um, I think that as a society, a lot of the times when we have like these moments in time, right? Like for me, like a big one most recently was to start traveling. And I started thinking to myself, like, that was probably the most impactful thing that I could have done in my whole entire life. That shaped everything because me leaving forced me to start viewing the world in a different way.
Hmm.
Like it's there's something to be said about picking up everything that you own and then going to live in a place for 3 months, get ingratiated in the culture, learn to work with these group of people, and sometimes these people are like great, fantastic coworkers that you genuinely love, and you spend all this time there, and then you pick up and leave after 3 months and go to the next spot. It makes you appreciate and value like the friendships that you do have, but more importantly, I think that it creates an opportunity. It creates an opportunity to help you grow if you allow it to help you grow. And you just kind of have to just be open to the lessons that life has for you, just in the regular mundane stuff. And I think like by and I'm sure you can probably have your own like stories about it, Hunter. But I know that living in Atlanta versus living in California, two different cultures, two different mindsets. But I still learned very valuable lessons from both. And then,
Hmm.
living here in Parkersburg right now, West Virginia, uh, it's different. And like, I'm actually like, I'm shocked a lot. Like, I think I was just saying that a lot of people here love anime. I was shocked because I'm sitting here, they're like, oh yeah, I love this. And I was like, what? You know, yeah, how do you know
Hmm.
about this? Versus, a lot of times I go places like I think I was in California and I had mentioned the anime. Nobody knew what I was talking about. Like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
But they kind of like, shoot me and wake me off. But versus
Yeah.
here, and I highlight that just to say that every culture is different, and you can always learn something from wherever you're at. No matter what's going on in your life, you can always learn from the people around you. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that because you know the the movement aspect is the first step is the hardest, right? Because you come up with a plan and now it's daunting, you're scared, you got to do it, and you just got to take your step. But the second thing, which I think is the most important thing, is you have to block out like what everyone else is saying. You have to block out like all the naysayers, the people that don't believe in your vision, that don't believe in your dream. And I appreciate you, Hunter, because you said it best. You said, well, I can do this or I cannot, but I'd rather just find out, so that way if I fail, then at least I failed knowing that I gave everything that I could in this direction, and I have nothing to regret or nothing to look back on.
Hmm.
I
How
actually have
many
a
times?
question. Oh, I was gonna ask.
Oh,
I had a question for Hunter, but take
go
it.
ahead. No, go ahead. I'll ask after.
I was gonna ask. So, okay, so you had mentioned that there's moments where you had kind of like, and I'm sure when I ask this, you're gonna start your brain's gonna start going. If there's a moment that you could think of, right? You had mentioned kind of like the ICU and from a healthcare perspective. But is there like a personal moment in your life, growing up or going through your adolescent ages and your early 20s? Would you say there's something that you've gone through where you it's a moment that you can never actually really get back, but you wish you could or could have done, not necessarily could have done differently, but if there was a time and place where you could put a pin and it was a beautiful moment in your life, the journey, a part of your journey, you said, you know what, if I could go back because that was just a beautiful moment. Is there a time that comes to your like right now on the spot in the moment that you could think of that's like, yes, that time right there, if I could go back to that moment, whether it was a good moment or a bad moment, or like a an improvement moment, like something you would have done differently. It's not even, that's not what I'm asking. It's more so just kind of a moment in life that you no longer can ever go back to and never relive exactly the same way. And I know this is kind of like an unrealistic question, but just to talk about that memory or that moment, is there something outside of the healthcare realm that you can think of for yourself that was more personable and that you can go, wow,
Yeah.
that moment?
No, that's a good question, Finn. That's I don't think about that stuff too often, but I have actually immediately popped in my head. It was always just my mother and I. I was the only person in my life, the only figured out. I never thought about it like this, so I appreciate you, Finn, for bringing that up. When I was 5, my father left. My mother was born, so I never really got to meet him. But when I was 4 or 5, he came to see me, and he lives really I don't know where he lives now, but at the time he lived far away, so he flew in to see me. And at the time, if I could pin that moment when he came, and when you're 4 or 5, you still don't even have consciousness, so like you're just on autopilot. You're not really even a human yet. You're just like kind of going through the primal instincts of being human. But like, I have memories of him that I know that I was starting to develop actual consciousness. Where if I could put a pin in that time, especially living in a small town where everyone's married. It was a very Catholic small town, total population of like 2,000. Divorce was not a common thing, especially growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s, like that. No one was divorced. They were just together. I don't know if it was like that anywhere else, but in my town it was. Uh, so I was weird. Like my mom was a single mom. That wasn't a good thing to anyone's eyes. My dad was there. If I could put a pin in it, I felt very, very normal. I felt like I had everything that my friends had. I felt like I was just like them. I felt like they all probably thought I was like the coolest kid ever. I thought they were like, "Oh man, like look, Hunter's just like us. He's normal. He can hang out with us. We can talk to him just like a normal person." And then unpinning that, and then having him leave, and never come back, and never having contact with him again. I think that definitely shaped who I am today for sure. And I don't want to give that credit necessarily to him. I want to give that credit to my mother for raising me. But I think there's something to be said of there was definitely a time that I can remember where I thought everything was it was like normal. And I was like, oh, I have a mother father. And it was like that moment that I have a memory of. And this isn't to discredit my mom. She's all I ever needed. She was my mom and my dad. So she's like the perfect mother and the perfect father. She was everything I ever needed in my life. But, and this is no fault of her own, but you can't help but feeling a little different. Like when you see your buddy's dad hanging out with them and then the mom kissing them, or you're at a baseball game with each other and they're sitting together in the stands and your mom's alone. And it's hard for her too because she's like an adult having to deal with this. I was like a little kid having to deal with it. Like, what are they gonna say to a little kid? She's the one that gets made fun of, not me. But yeah, I think that if I could go, if I go back in time to a time that felt different than what I feel right now, it was I didn't have a dad until I was like I never met my dad until I was like 5, but I didn't even think about it because I didn't have consciousness. But then I developed consciousness like the day he came, and that day, like I felt really, really normal. I felt like I could walk down and I could have my dad on my right hand, my mom on my left, and they'd be swinging me down the sidewalk. Um, and then, he hasn't been since, so it's felt weird. I don't want to say it's felt empty at all because again, my mother's filled that. She's given me a surplus of everything I've needed in life, including everything emotionally. But yeah, that's a long-winded way to answer your question, but I would say that moment.
Well, I will say I appreciate you sharing that, man, because I know that sometimes, that's something
That's
you,
tough.
it's what Adler said earlier, is bottling something up. Um,
Yeah,
it, man, it's powerful. It hit me because when you speak on that, like, it's something that awkward feeling, the weird feeling. I think everybody has that feeling, but in a different way. So, just to add a follow up question, where you are today, do you still, I mean, this is, you don't have to answer this, but do you still feel like, would you want that? Okay, so where you are now today, knowing where you are today, how successful you are
Mhm.
today, would you want that normal feeling today? Or are you okay with where you are now and appreciative of the moment that you had then in that moment, that it is just a memory at this point and not actually a reality, so to speak?
Yeah, I would say everything in my life, and I don't want to change because it's the butterfly effect. Like if a butterfly flaps its wing differently, the whole future's changed.
Right.
I love exactly who I am. I love the people I have in my life. I love my girlfriend. I love my friends. I love my family. So, in my career, of course, I can't overstate that enough. I love everything about my life. And I have such a good bill of health. I always knock on wood when I say that. Everything about my life is great. You know, I'm so blessed. I'm beyond blessed. So I
I love hearing
can't
that.
say that I want anything to be different. You know.
I love hearing that, man. I appreciate it, man. I love the openness. I think that's one thing that we try to emphasize is that healing begins with being honest with yourself and just kind of tapping into, excuse me, like tapping into that, tapping into something that, is, so many people probably can or can't relate. Having two parents, I wouldn't be able to imagine or even understand what you were going through during those times as a young man, even as a child, on autopilot at 5 years old or before 5 years old.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you sharing that because I know we all can kind of look back on moments like that, and it's not necessarily the exact same. That's the thing. Like everyone has an emotional tie to an event. That's, your event that you experience, that you go back to, that you remember, that means and has so much value.
Mhm.
But I just appreciate you sharing that, man. Like I know that's, I don't know, like it's just those are the moments that make this podcast so just impeccable because we talk about things
Yeah.
that just like hit you right here as a listener, as a host. Like I'm listening to you, and I felt that. I felt it. Like,
Mhm.
so thanks for sharing that, man.
Well,
I
I
appreciate that.
appreciate you asking I appreciate you asking the question, Finn, and it kind of goes back to what, in a roundabout way, it goes back to what Adler kind of said. Like, I strongly believe stress is what creates change, and not just like not just in like, you're stressed out and it's going to change. Like literally in a chemistry way, like you apply heat to an element, it changes. You apply temperature change. Like stress is what creates change on all things in the environment. And so, Adler, you moving, and no longer having any safety net whatsoever. You don't know anybody, but not just that, you don't have your favorite hot dog stand in Florida. Like everything is different now for you. My stress that I just talked about, Finn, any stress you've been through, like any stress that we go through whatsoever, I view it as, and this is easy for me to say because I am blessed in a lot of ways, but I view as long as you can look up from however you fell on your back, the stress that you went through is a positive thing because what you can become from that stress, it's like a phoenix that gets like burned from the ashes. Like from the ashes comes a more beautiful bird. So the stress that you go through, it's like, yeah, you get beaten down, you're on the ground, you feel like crap. But when that version of Hunter gets up after feeling like crap, he's so much better than what he was. You guys talking about how like I was at my lowest in the ICU. Um, I was a worse hunter than what I was in college whenever I was at a low point in the ICU. But I came back from that and now I feel like I'm a better hunter than I've ever been. But it required me to be so extremely low. It required stress to be crushing me.
You're
So I
more so.
appreciate the stress that I've been given.
Well, and you said something that like I'm not sure why, but it just immediately once you said it, like this was a quote that popped in my head: "Is absence creates fondness of the heart." And usually, when you
Mm,
hear that, people are referring to a relationship and how you can be
Mhm.
with somebody, but then a little space just makes you appreciate them more. But in this sense, I like to just kind of highlight like if you can acknowledge and experience a time where you've gone without money, then when you have a time where you have money, you appreciate it that much more because you know how it feels to be without.
Yeah.
When you go through a time where you don't have food, then when you actually get food, you're so thankful, you're grateful because you know a time, a place where you didn't have. And um, not having something and realizing that you want it or you need it or your life will be better from it, it makes you, it really puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
And like the different life experiences that each and every single one of us have, got a chance to go through. Obviously, you came from a single parent home. Finn was actually adopted from Russia. So, going through that, and I'm a first generation immigrant. Like that's the hand that we were dealt, and each
Hmm.
one of us have different experiences, and you know it, it makes you that much more appreciative of what you went through, because not only it works, like it's like a double-edged sword. You get an example of what to do when you get older, but you also
Hmm.
see what not to do, and you
Hmm.
can make a conscious effort to say, all right, I won't be this, and I have to make sure I have to come up with a plan and follow X, Y, and Z.
I
um,
don't know if it's the same for you guys, not to interrupt either. I don't know if it's the same for both of you, but for me growing up with a single mom, because we were certainly we were financially at a very low point. You would probably call us like the lowest rung of the ladder in terms of society from a fiscal standpoint. Because it was that low for me, it's allowed me to take like really high risks for things. Because in my head, I tell myself, what's the worst that's going to happen? I'm going to go back to being that poor. I mean, I survived then. I'll just find my way to get out again. And I have this, say I get a certain amount of money and I'm like, okay, like I can do this with it, or I can just hang on to it, hold it really tight and like just keep it in my savings account or whatever. But I'm like, no, I'm going to make an educated, strong risk here. And if it doesn't work out, well, what's going to happen? I'm just going to be poor. Like I'll just try to unpoor myself again, you know? Like,
Always get it back. That's
exactly. Yeah.
always get it
I
back.
think
Somebody
that there was a conversation that we had at work, and I try really hard not to bring up work, but this was a actual like a good thing to talk about. We kind of had some downtime a couple of weeks ago, and I was in triage, and the conversation was about the lesson. There was one thing our parents told us, our mom or dad. For me, I have a strong connection with my dad, and I'm only saying that because I didn't have the greatest relationship as a kid with him because he was gone, and as being in the military, he was always away. So when he retired, I felt like me and him had a lot of bonding time and moments to just kind of talk about life, which I didn't really appreciate much at the time. I just kind of blew it off, and I was already like that anyways, just because of my story being in an orphanage for such a long time, and not really 9 months, but I still think for an infant that's a long time. Um,
Yeah.
but that's aside. So I think about the one lesson, and the lesson is, and if you guys can relate or tag onto this, add something to it because I feel like everybody can relate. Being a kid, stay a kid, and like my parents, my dad especially would say, "Son, enjoy being a kid because once you hit 18 and you start becoming an adult, you will never ever in your entire life ever be a kid again." I'm not saying you
Yep,
can't have that child, like you leave the childish ways, but you can still be a
it's
child at
gone.
heart. But being a kid, that knowing that you like, I like how you said you're being on autopilot. Like you wake
Hmm.
up, you go and play, you just do whatever. There's no
Hmm.
responsibility. There's no, I mean, there was accountability, but there was no responsibility. So you just kind of hung out with your friends. You just goofed off. You got in trouble. You didn't worry about bills. Like those things were just like, now I think about, oh my gosh, man, if I could go back and be a kid, and that's a memory like that comes to mind, but a life lesson. It's a life lesson because I wasted a lot of years rushing to become an adult. And I'll be honest, as much as I want to rush, bills still show up each month. And I don't rush. This was when I was 18. I was like, dang, man, now I'm ready to be 21. And it's like, man, I'll be
Hmm.
25 in a few weeks. And I'm just like, I just shake my head and I'm like,
Yeah.
man, quarter of a life is already gone. And it's like insane to think that that much time has already passed. And I can just remember being 5, 6, 7, 8 years old and, going on
Hmm.
vacations and not having to save anything because my mom and dad took care of it, or, just the mindlessness of playing Legos in the morning with my brother. Like there's just like so much you just go look back on. So I don't know if you guys feel the same way. Like, man, if there was a one life lesson that our parents taught us, just, enjoy being a child, enjoy being a kid, because once it's gone, it's gone. Um, I don't know if you guys have anything to add on to that, or to like just kind of just
Well,
keep it running on,
I,
because it's crazy.
I I will say this, right? Because all of us are in the same position in terms of we don't see our parents every day. I'm assuming because your mom lives in another part of Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah, yeah, she's about 3.5 hours away, so yeah, I don't see her
So
often.
you don't see her often. So what? Let's say um, you see your parents, and Finn, I'm sure you probably know where I'm going to go with this. You see
I
your
know
parents
it
Christmas,
motivated me this year.
New Year's, Thanksgiving, any other holiday, maybe Fourth of July, maybe
Easter.
Memorial Day,
Hmm.
Easter. That's six. So, and then maybe a few spontaneous trips.
And these are all still maybes, you know?
That's
We're gonna go with yeah, exactly. We're gonna go with 10 as a minimum. 10 minimum times a year you see them. So I don't know about you guys, but my parents are in their 60s. I'm not going to give their direct age, but that means that for the next, if they live for another 15, 20 years, let's go 20 years because that's a clean number. Then that means I only have another 200 times to sit and interact with my parents. And that blows my mind. And that's something that like it sent a spark like through my spine. And I started asking my dad just different things like, Dad, if where's a place that you've never vacationed to that you just always wanted to? And his first response was, I want to go to Puerto Rico. Unfortunately, last year, because of the hurricanes, we weren't able to do it. So the next thing I was like, Dad, where else? He's like, Well, I've never been out west. I'd like to go to California. And I said, Oh, done. That's it. So me and my brother, we bought them tickets, flew them out, paid for their hotel, and we had a whole vacation. And it was on us. And it felt good because it's like, all right, I know for a fact that I can't live there and be there every single day because I
Hmm.
have to live my life. I've got to do what I've got to do, and I've come up with my own plan, and I have to commit to it. But I need to know that on the times that we do have, that I make it impactful and meaningful and something worthwhile. It can't just be like mindlessly interacting with somebody, just assuming like that. Like to me, and this is my own opinion. That's like almost like slapping God in the face and saying, "Well, hey, I got time. I got another 15 years. Relax.
Hmm.
At any moment, you can be taken like that." And so when you do have those opportunities, those moments where things kind of slow down and you get a chance to be in each other's presence, then the word is present. Make sure that you think of it as a gift, accept it as
Hmm.
a gift, and you know, be mentally, emotionally, physically there instead of, all right, we're here together, but I'm on my phone. So
Yeah.
like it kind of like you wanted my 2 cents on what you said, Finn, and that's the first thing that came to my mind is just making sure that you take advantage of the opportunities that you have with your loved ones, your family, and you cash in on it.
We've I've read a statistic where by the time you turn 18 and um assuming that you pursue a career at 18, like say you move out of your parents' house, which is typical that we do like in our Western culture.
Mhm.
By the time you turn 18 years old, you've spent 95% of the time you'll ever spend with your parents. And that's because from 0 to 18, you spend every single day. And that accumulates to be like, what is that, 6,000 days or something.
Yeah,
But then once that's done, is that the right, is that about 5,000 days, something like that? What
yeah.
is 18 times
I'm gonna
365?
calculate it.
We're not mathematicians, all right? We're
Yeah,
just
yeah. I'm gonna go with 5,000 something.
6,570.
yeah,
Ooh, let's go.
But
yeah.
if
So,
you're adding leap years, there's a couple extra days onto that. So
Well,
okay, okay.
we're in the ballpark. That's all that matters.
That's
I was
right.
close.
So you spent 6,000 days with your parents by the time you turn 18. And then you move out and then you start doing what Adler said, where you're spending 10 days a year. So that's why by the time you're 18 years old, you spend 95% of the days that you'll ever spend with your parents. Um, and whenever I heard that statistic, it made me like extremely upset, thinking of, okay, in the same way of what you're saying, Adler, like I only have so much time left with these people who brought me into this world. Uh, for me, this person, but you know what I mean? Like it's, yeah, I want to capitalize on that in any capacity whatsoever. If that's even me just sitting in the couch with my mom and just looking her in her eyes and just talking to her for like 5 hours. Yeah, I
Yep.
want to do that. I want to spend on social media.
I
Yeah,
will say I did that a couple weeks ago with my mom, and that
Yeah.
well Adler actually okay again another Adler,
I
this
bullied you
example
into doing something else.
this example that he used on an episode, and it's weird sometimes. Like we create these episodes in love for people to listen to, and it's funny because when you're as a host and it just hits you in the chest when you're listening to what we're talking about, it's like Adler said something, and I'm like, man, that like gave me goosebumps. Goosebumps ran through my entire body. I thought about myself, man. It's my dad, my mom, and they're like mid 50s now. And I remember my dad. I have my dad's photo on my phone is of me and him, and it's like he's I want to say probably mid, maybe lower 30s, like 20 something years ago. And I'm just thinking to myself, like time has flown, right? So I was like, this year, like this was, I think, before 2023, like going into it, I was like, all right, this is my goal. This is actually one of the goals I've done. And I've done it every single month this year so far, seeing my parents at least once, but I have seen them more than once. I've actually seen them like a minimum of 2 or 3 times a month, just because how important that was. Like, Adler, you don't understand. Like, I know, never really tell you this, but like the importance of that, like that moment that you talked about, that it really put it into perspective. Like, God knows how long. We don't know. We don't know how long. We like to project the
Mm.
average age of 80, but we don't know. Like 80, I mean, this is you see so many people in the emergency room that are like my parents' age. I look like they're 90 years old because they don't take care of themselves. And so thankfully my parents do,
Mm.
but a lot of people don't. So when I heard Adler say that, I was like, dude, I gotta go see my parents. I have to go visit them more often. Yes, the drive is a little long. They're in Tampa. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours, uh, one way. But I will say, just like you were saying, Hunter, I sat with my mom. We went out to eat on Cinco de Mayo, and we went shopping. But then we just sat and talked in the car for like 2 hours. Like just sat there. They were like, "Why don't we go get a coffee?" And then continue that conversation for another 2 hours. And my mom at the end, I put my mom through a lot of hell. I get emotional talking about it because as a kid, your mom, especially with the fact that they adopted me. My mom, she got a lot of the bad of me because she was home and taking care of my brother and I, and just trying to do everything she could as a mom, knowing her husband is out because of the military. But it was just, it was nice sitting there as a grown man talking to my mom about getting married next year. Is really weird, but I was telling her that getting married. We were talking about like how she want her and my dad want to help. Like that's the conversation I would have never really thought of having. When you're 10, 11 years old, you're talking about how your grades are crap and how you need to clean your room. And now it's like, how can we help you with your wedding next year? Where are you doing? Like, it's just like, it brings like, I want to cry because it kind of hits me like thinking that was a conversation I had with my mom. And this is a woman that I put through so much hell. I mean, I know I'm using this word in the context of the brutality of what I had put my mom through emotionally, mentally. So, um, it's just, it was motivating for Adler to have said that. And he says it a lot here on the podcast, but it's a great reminder for anybody out there who's listening to this, and Hunter, for you as well, spending that time with the person. And that statistic that you just mentioned, that just made it even scarier because it's like, holy cow, like 95% of time is spent 0 to 18. That's insane. That is literally insane. Like, makes me want to fill up that 5% with my parents as much as possible. So, but I don't know. I just wanted to share that because it's kind of like it is a place we all can, somewhere in the midst of all the things we're going through day to day, we can sit down and say, yeah, that is the culture shock that we get when you realize your parents and even us when we become parents, we don't last forever. Unfortunately, it's just the cycle of life. And I'm not trying to get depressed or sound sad here right now. I'm just this is just
Getting
like a
very
very
somber. Like I'm gonna
emotional.
keep
This is a
like
very emotional
No,
moment.
no. I mean, that's why life's so beautiful, Finn. It's because we're not here for. That's why. There was this quote from. Did you guys ever watch Troy with Brad Pitt?
yes,
Oh,
Yes.
man, there's this great quote he does whenever he's playing Achilles, and he's like, uh, he tells this woman, he said, the gods envy us because we're not here forever, and that's what makes us. We'll never be more beautiful than we are now. Their lives are meaningless because they're here forever. Like what that doesn't make any. It doesn't make tomorrow more important than yesterday. It doesn't make 10 years from now more important than 10 years ago. Like you're just into perpetuity. Nothing matters. But whenever you're ephemeral, whenever your life has brevity to it, that's whenever this thing matters. That's whenever you can say, okay, I'm seizing this day because I'm not going to be here 100 years from now. I'm not going to be here, who knows, 5 years from now. Who knows tomorrow? So it makes like everything that much more like beautiful. It's almost like if you had Christmas every day, Christmas isn't fun. But Christmas is once a year. That's why Christmas is so cool, you know? So something like that.
no,
I love it,
I
man.
think
Mic drop.
that's
Yeah.
I mean that's a very very great point. Uh, I don't think that I could possibly say that any better myself. Uh, I kind of want to continue, but like I know that we're getting to that hour mark.
This is a somber
So
moment, man. We
no,
took it the last couple minutes. We just like I feel like we just got really
I bet you we're gonna get a lot of people that's gonna hit us up and say, "Hey, man, I called my mom and we sat there and talked for about 4 hours. It was a good
That's
time."
perfect.
Definitely, if like we can't stress this enough. Like if you have any loved one, doesn't necessarily have to be a parent, because I understand some people have terrible relationships with their parents. But if you got a loved one in your life, if you got somebody you care for, reach out, let them know you care, let them know that you're thinking about them. Because oftentimes people deal with demons and stuff on their own, and you never truly know what somebody's dealing with until you actually reach out to say, "Hey." And like I grew up watching Robin Williams, and to me, Robin Williams was one of the strongest people that I ever like got a chance to see with my eyes, and to hear that he took his life makes you really put things into perspective. The reason why we
Mm.
value and cherish life so much is the threat of death. If there was no threat of
Yep.
death, then obviously we wouldn't value it. So definitely hit up and contact whoever it is that you care about, whoever you love. And more importantly, realize that you only get one life. You only get one bite at the apple. You only get one opportunity, one chance, one shot. And if you got to go, then you got to go for it. You can't sit on the sidelines waiting for the perfect time, because newsflash, there is no perfect time. There's only now. And now is the only time that we got. So you can
Mm.
either use it wisely or you can spend it, unwise. But nonetheless, time keeps on ticking and keeps moving forward.
That's right.
mic drop number 3.
Yep. Let's go.
Yeah, a couple mics dropped. But Hunter, it was awesome having you here, man, on the show. Like
We
literally,
appreciate
Yeah.
you.
I will say that this has been by far one of the more emotional, like emotionally, how do you say this? I mean,
Emotionally charged.
yeah, it was an emotionally charged
Mm.
conversation, and I appreciate you being so open and being, taking the time out of your day and out of your busy schedule, and joining us here and through Adler and Abby. So it's
I appreciate both of you.
no,
Yeah,
for sure,
hey, thank
man,
you.
for
Thank you.
sure. And
Um, so we're just gonna do a quick announcement. Finn, did you do anything to the site? I thought you were gonna unveil something, or is it too soon? Okay, it's too soon. Um,
Wait. But before, Finn and Adler, I'm more than willing to be a reoccurring guest. I love
hey,
talking to you guys, so please
okay,
hit me back up.
nice, sweet.
absolutely, man.
He's addicted
It,
to podcasts. Now he's gonna be doing podcasts too. See,
The, the three hosts
hey,
of the Bestie Nation.
hey, Anytime,
No,
any
three's a
place.
crowd. Three's a crowd. Three's a crowd. I can't. But yeah,
We actually, I remember for a while we really didn't have, we had guests for a while, and then we had a third host, and then that was great in the season in the moment, and then we kind of been just duoing it, but we really kind of pushed for making more time to bring people on, because it's nice talking, hearing Adler and I speak, but having a third
yeah,
or even sometimes a fourth person, it's just
hmm
there's more brains in a room, and you have more emotions and more mentality, and there's just more knowledge and
yeah,
experiences that come to the table, and it's actually really interesting listening to other people go through something and kind of relate to each other, like having that fear
yeah,
of going through something, and it's like, oh hey, me too, or like, hey, I understand why you're
yeah,
coming from that direction.
Yeah.
yeah.
But I don't know what am I supposed to talk about or introduce,
Oh
like.
no, I thought you were working on something with the website, so I thought you were gonna unveil it.
Oh, no, 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 not yet.
Yeah, okay.
Not yet.
So
Not yet.
So
Next
that's
time.
that's something. But anyway, what's your handle on TikTok, Hunter?
It's just my name, Hunter Prosper. That's on Instagram, YouTube. I don't know what else am I on. Maybe Facebook. Everything. I'm Hunter Prosper.
Okay, perfect. Definitely check him out. Great content, as I was saying. Um, Social media is one of those things that you can either allow it to distract you and keep you down, or you can use it as a tool to sharpen you up, to help you emotionally process the things that you're going through. And Hunter does a great job with his platforms in making you just really think about your life. And even if it's a tough conversation, it just kind of opens you up to having that conversation. Check us out on Instagram at the Best You Nation, the Finn Foster, and 24 hours in a day. And then I have a TikTok as well. I believe it's 24 hours in a day, if I'm not mistaken. But show us some love. And
I don't have a
I
TikTok,
think,
so don't look for me. You will not find me. You will
yes,
not.
you won't complain.
I did at one time. I honestly got very confused on how to work TikTok. I was like I tried for like 6 months, and I just found it more interesting scrolling through it, and that's why I got rid of it, because I was
Yeah.
just spending hours just watching mad people on airplane rides screaming and yelling what people
Yeah.
should and shouldn't do, or So I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's it.
Anywho, we appreciate you guys for tuning in on this week's episode. Definitely check us out next Monday at 5. We love you. Thank you. And we're out.
We're out.
Yeah.